nations, oh let us rejoice, for we are young and free. With gold we'll toil and wealth for toil, our home is good by sea. Our lands abound in nature's gifts, for beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains and let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The national anthem of the Republic of Serbia.
Bože pravde, ti što spase od propasti do sad nas, čuj od sad naše glase i od sad nam budi spas. Moćnom rukom vodi, brani budućnosti srpski rod. Bože spasi, Bože brani srpske zemlje, srpski rod. Bože spasi, Bože brani srpske zemlje, srpski rod.
Thank you. That was Angela Malbasha, who sang both Australian and the Serbian national anthem, and was accompanied by Natalia Lukic. Please be upstanding once again for the Lord's Prayer and the blessing of the table.
Da bude volja Tvoja jako nebesi na zemlji. Hljeb naš nasušni daš nam dnes i ostavi nam dolgi naše, jako že i mi ostavljajem dožnikom našim. I ne uvedi nas svoje iskušenje, no izbavi nas od lukavog. Slava Otcu i Sinu i Svjatomu Duhu i nje i prisna i vo vijeki vjekov. Amin. Gospodi pomiluj, Gospodi pomiluj, Gospodi pomiluj. Vladiko svjati blagoslovi.
Lord Jesus Christ, bless this food and drink for your servants, for you are holy always, now and ever, and unto the ages of ages.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. We're just going to begin with the welcome address by the co-directors of the Serbian Festival, being myself, Mihailo Mijatovic, and Sandra Milisavljevic. Sandra will begin with the opening. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Your Grace, Bishop Silovan of the Serbian Orthodox Metropolitan of Australia, Reverend Fathers, Ms. Ivana Isidorovic, First Councillor, Deputy of Chief of Mission of the Serbian Embassy, Canberra, Ms. Zorica Žirojevic, Chief of Mission, Embassy of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Canberra, the Honourable Mr. Alex Hawke, Federal Minister for Immigration and Multicultural Affairs, representing the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian, Mr. Peter Sidgraves, Member of Camden, representing Mr. Chris Hayes, Member for Fowler, Mr. Alex Glumutz, Mr. Paul Lynch, Member for Liverpool, and Councillor Robert Koch, City of Sydney. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Serbian Statehood Day Banquet, or as we say in Serbian, Dobrodošli na banket povodom proslave Dana Drzavnosti Srbije. Let us begin by paying our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We also pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, and extend their respect to the other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are present here today. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this past year has been more difficult than most, not just for Australia, but for all the people across the world. We acknowledge and are grateful that in Australia we are fared better than most, and we ask Mr. Sidgraves to convey our thanks and appreciation to the Premier, our Gladys, for her outstanding work in keeping New South Wales safe and functioning. As a result of the pandemic, we are unable to host our traditional 9th Serbian Sydney Festival in Tumbalong Park, held around this time every year. SOYA, the Serbian Orthodox Youth of Australia team, thought long and hard about how to celebrate this auspicious occasion without the usual thousands of people who attend the annual festival. With the blessing of His Grace, Bishop Silowan, and the support of the Metropolitan Institution, and in conjunction with the Serbian Embassy in Canberra, we celebrate Serbia's liberation from Ottoman rule over 200 years ago, here in the heart of Sydney. Australia and Serbians share many similarities in their history. Both nations fought together on the side of freedom and liberty for both World War I and World War II. Both nations also celebrate their largest military defeats, yet moral victories, as one of the most important national days. As Australians, we celebrate Anzac Day on the 25th of April each year to commemorate the loss of lives in the Anzac assault on Gallipoli. As Serbs, we celebrate Vidovdan, which commemorates the Battle of Kosovo, which took place on the 28th of June, 1839, where Serbs suffered a dreadful defeat to a far superior and numerically greater enemy in their attempt to defend their lands and freedom from Ottoman tyranny. The nature of these historic events shaped the ethos of both our nations, giving them a unique sense of identity based on self-sacrifice at any cost.
Dan Drzavnosti is celebrated annually on the 15th of February and commemorates the first Serbian uprising of 1804. This uprising evolved into the Serbian Revolution against Ottoman rule and oppression. This revolution ultimately resulted in the recognition of the Serbian nation in 1817, and on the 15th of February 1835, Serbia would go on to adopt its first constitution, providing freedom of religion, of movement, and the abolition of feudalism and serfdom. Serbia became the first nation in the Balkans to institute the separation of powers through the creation of the parliament and an independent judiciary. While we commemorate our historic losses, let us pause to reflect on those we have recently lost. Sadly, in the past 12 months, His Holiness, the Serbian Patriarch Irene, His Eminence Metropolitan Amfolia of Montenegro, and His Grace Bishop Milutin of Valjevo left us. These three of blessed memory hierarchs shared more than one similarity in their pastoral dedication. And on this occasion, it would be remiss of us not to stress their complete oneness of mind and spirited determination in preserving the unity of the Serbian people with the ancestral cradle of our nation, Kosovo and Metohija, in Serbia's south. Located at the back of this room and to my right, you will see the humble in size exhibition of the Serbian goldwork and embroidery from Serbia's holy province, and it testifies to the enduring presence of the Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija. A child's vest dating back to the late 1700s is tangible evidence that those who live there were no invading or occupying force, much less to the perceived aggressors of the 1990s. They lived there for centuries. Evidence in scores of Serbian Orthodox churches and monasteries that still dot the landscape of the Serbian heartland. The time is surely ripe for a reassessment of the facts and the recognition that the Serbs who continue to love Kosovo and Metohija are not the aggressors, but indeed the aggrieved. Closer to home, another great loss was suffered by the entire Serbian Australian community and especially the Serbian Orthodox Youth Association, the Serbian festival team, with the passing of Mr. Peter Kozlina, OAM. Peter was the driving force behind the creation and inception of the Serbian Orthodox Youth Association, and his dream was to see young people build an event which would help inform the wider Australian community about what it means to be Serbian. He inspired many young people to join SOYA and to give their time in service for their community. He is truly missed, and we hope that the continuation of the Serbian festival serves as a testament to his legacy. On behalf of our host, His Grace Bishop Silowan, welcome once again. I now invite the Treasurer of the Serbian Orthodox Youth Association, Mr. John Jeremic, up to give his speech. Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to first acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. Your Excellency, First Councillor Ivana Isidorovic, Chief of Mission of the Embassy of the Republic of Bosnia, Ms. Zorica Zagorovic, the Honourable Mr. Alex Hawke, Federal Member, representing the Premier of New South Wales, Peter Sirgraves, representing Mr. Chris Hayes, Member of Fafala, Alex Glumach, Peter Lynch, Councillor Peter Koch, Bishop Silowan, dignitaries, guests, brothers and sisters. Thank you for coming today to celebrate with us Serbian National Statehood Day. Firstly, can I ask, is there anybody here in the healthcare sector? Any doctors, nurses, mental health care, aged care workers? Great, there's no one. So, there is someone. There is someone from the healthcare sector. Great. Well, I wanted to start by thanking you for going the extra mile this last year. It has been a stressful last 12 months for all aspects of healthcare, and I'd like to thank you and recognise the efforts that you have made being the front line for people's health and well-being, and I hope you get some well-earned rest in 2021. This last year has truly been a unique year for all of us, a unique experience which I'm sure we would all wish to forget and put long into our distant memories. Unfortunately, I'm sure everyone knows someone that has been affected in some shape or manner by COVID. If it's not one of your relatives in Serbia that's had it and hopefully recovered, then it's yourself or a family member that has had to make do this last year with job losses, reduced hours, reduced pay, and just making do. I've moved up from Melbourne in the heat of it all, and I can assure you down there for Melburnians, it's been a very hard year. And even this week, with another statewide lockdown, we can only hope for better times. All we can do is hope and pray that our sacrifices have not been in vain, and that in some manner 2021 will be a better year than 2020. So today we celebrate Serbian National Statehood Day. We celebrate and commemorate the outbreak of the first Serbian uprising against the Ottoman Empire. On this day, February 15, 1804, in Andelovac in central Serbia, Karađorđe Petrović started the uprising of the Serbs against the Turks, which led to the anti-Turkish revolution in Serbia. In 1935, on the same day 21 years later, the first modern constitution of Serbia was proclaimed. So today we remember our forefathers and the trials and tribulations they went through for nearly 600 years. Commencing from the first battle against the Ottomans in 1352, and finally when the Ottomans recognised Serbia as a state in 1830. Today as well we celebrate our Serbian Orthodox church throughout centuries of oppression, of persecution, and throughout all the battles and tyranny, our forefathers were able to hold fast to the faith, to continue with our beliefs and our traditions. What is probably not so well known is that Candlemas, Sretenje, which is the presentation of Jesus in the temple, was celebrated on the very day, 15th of February 1804. Candlemas marks the day of Jesus' first attendance at the temple, 40 days after his birth, in which his parents Joseph and Mary gave thanks and made a sacrificial offering. So I can imagine Karageorgi in 1804 with his band of loyal followers. Now they were inspired to lead others on to new beginnings, to make significant changes, to start a new awakening. And on the very day of Sretenje, they'd probably been attending liturgy and celebrations in their local parish, and they decided to go out and make a stand against the tyranny and oppressions that Serbs and our church had been subject to for so long. So today, we remember, we celebrate, and we are thankful for our forefathers and how the church was able to be a light and a pillar in every city, town, and village, and give faith and support to our people. Times may have changed. Circumstances may have changed. But the same need for our community to have faith and trust in what the Lord has planned for us remains, and unchanged the same. Yes, we have all had someone affected by this virus, either health-wise or economic-wise, in this last year. But by holding on to our beliefs and faith, through all things we shall overcome. As a community, we need to remember our forefathers and what they went through. Far greater catastrophes, with longer and harder trials, and yes, they did overcome. In February 2012, after nearly a year of planning, the Serbian Orthodox youth SOYA held its first festival in Tumbalong Park, just behind us over the way. And our youth each year have since undertaken to deliver an amazing two-day event with attendances on average of over 35 to 40,000 each year across the 2 days. The festival is attended by guests and visitors, not just from Sydney, but across Australia as well as from overseas. This weekend marks the first time in the last 9 years that we haven't held our Serbian festival. I can assure you plans were well underway to deliver a COVID-safe event for this weekend. But given the further social distancing regulations in place due to the mid-December North Sydney COVID outbreak, we were unfortunately unable to hold this year's Serbian festival event. But we will be back in 2022, and we promise to deliver the best event we possibly can. I would like to thank the youth that have collectively worked together to deliver the last 9 years of events. I would like to thank the youth that have worked behind the scenes for the last 6 months, who have planned for the festival event and then had to focus on today's event given the recent COVID changes. Specifically, Mihailo, who is somewhere, and Sandra, who is somewhere else, and our social media team. I would like to thank the SOYA youth and the local parish priests across Australia who have been working to undertake local events and seminars for the youth. I would like to thank Bishop Silowan for supporting the youth and our projects and recognising that the youth play a critical role in our churches and communities' future. Bishop Silowan recognised the critical importance in nurturing and instilling the youth from a young age, and through Bishop's great driving force, St. Sava College was officially opened by the Premier a few weeks ago. And now finally, our youth from prep upwards can get schooled with a Serbian Orthodox focus, and this new generation of youth will grow up in the church and foster a new generation of leaders. I'm truly grateful for the drive and passion you have shown and given to the college project over the last 3 years. I would like to thank the Mijatovic family for sponsoring the wonderful ice sculpture of our national emblem at the end. So during the evening, feel free, in a COVID-safe manner, to wander over and have a look. I would also like to thank our sponsors over the years who have supported our festival and made a success. I would like to thank all the members of Parliament and the community leaders who have attended our festival events in past years, some of which who are here today. I thank you and look forward to seeing you next year. Last but not least, I would like to thank you all for attending our celebration of Serbian National Statehood Day. I hope and trust that 2021 allows us all to spend more time with each other and that you will enjoy this evening. Thank you again.
Thank you, John. We're now going to hear from Miss Ivana Izadorovic, Charge d'Affaires at Interim of the Embassy of the Republic of Serbia. Just great, welcome her to the microphone. Thank you.
Your Grace, esteemed guests, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. It's truly an honor at this ceremonial and important day for the Serbian people to have the opportunity to address you with a few words. The Republic of Serbia celebrates the Statehood Day, but also the great Christian and Church holy day, Sretenje Gospodnje. On this day, in 1804, the official gathering in Orthodox started. A great uprising began for the liberation of the Serbian people, led by the immortal leader Karađorđe. The road to freedom and the renewal of the Serbian state has begun in this town, and today we celebrate it as one of the most important dates in Serbian history. 3 decades later, in Knez Miloš's free Serbia, on this very day, the most free and most advanced, the most modern constitution of that time, published right in the Principality of Serbia, was presented to Europe and the world. Our country had many ups and downs, as we are all aware, and even today we are facing challenges which we must deal with wisely, as we did 217 years ago. Even today, we must be persistent and strong and say that war and surrender are not an option for us, but that we choose only peace and cooperation. In order to preserve freedom and independence, we must continue to develop our state. Serbia is growing and conquering, but not new spaces and territories, but new values. Serbs are a united nation wherever we live and wherever we are, cherishing our tradition, our identity, our pride, and our language. We must never forget our history, but also the fact that we all write history for generations to come. Let them mention us with pride as we mention our ancestors today. Today, Serbia is recording successes in many fields. Like other countries, and as you had a chance to hear already, Serbia faced great challenges in 2020, primarily health challenges. And all factors in the country were focused on preventing the spread of the virus and preserving the lives and health of citizens. Serbia has faced these challenges better than many richer and more developed countries in Europe and the world. Our state relied on itself and its own strength, and what is good should not be changed. So if we continue like that, there is no reason to doubt the better times await us. I'm very excited to say that We have so many inquiries regarding the conditions for obtaining the Serbian citizenship, and so many schools and students all over Australia are contacting the embassy asking for Serbian flags or books or any kind of traditional Serbian handcrafts, only because they like Serbia very much. A lot of our people who spent nearly 30 years in Australia are calling, simply expressing their desire to go back and live there. It's something that makes you feel very proud of your country, your people, and your history. A few of us had the opportunity to attend the official opening of the first Serbian school in Australia, St. Sava College, which is a truly historical event for Serbian Orthodox Church and Serbian community here. It was truly an extraordinary moment to see the children running around, laughing, playing. It is our mission to keep those children safe, to help them grow in wisdom, to take on responsibility, to overcome adversity, but to always maintain their innocence, their purity of heart and mind. It's our liability to help them preserve the connection with their homeland, their language and tradition. Wherever Serbs live, they can expect the help of their Serbian state, because Serbia will only exist and survive together with its people. The state of Serbia and its constitutional and legal system guarantees everyone, regardless of their ethnicity or religion, the opportunity to share a common vision of a society of equal opportunities for all. That is how it is where Serbian laws are applied. And we rightly want, expect, and hope that Serbs as well enjoy such rights wherever our laws are not in effect. And Australia is a great example of such a practice. And since we are in Australia, I presume we are, or majority are loyal fans of Novak Djokovic. Let me tell you one anecdote that somehow often follows me on my journeys abroad. When people ask, where are you from? And you say from Serbia, I usually get the answer, oh, I know, it's very cold in your country, thinking of Siberia. And when you try to explain, no, it's not Siberia, it's Serbia, you usually have two thoughts on your mind at first. One of them is either to mention former Yugoslavia, which goes well and it's well received in some countries of non-alignment movement or elderly people, amongst elderly people. And the other opportunity you have is, of course, to mention who else the world's number one, Novak Djokovic, and it's well received everywhere. But please don't get me wrong. I just want you to remember one thing. Although Novak Djokovic is undoubtedly Serbia, Serbia is not just Novak Djokovic. Serbia is also Saint Sava, Vuk Karadžić, Pupin and Tesla, Cvijić, Crnjanski and Andrić, Putnik and Mišić. Serbia is Žiča, Mileševa, Studenica, Dečani, Gračanica. Serbia is Morava and Ibar, Zlatibor and Tara. And please allow me to say the next few words in Serbian, and forgive me for choosing to do so. It's simply because I honestly believe they sound more special. Srbija je slavski kolač, žito i sveća, opanak, šajkača i srmom izvezen jelek, kolo i pesma, frula i harmonika, čutura sa rakijom, nemanjički dvoglavi orao, trobojka. All that is Serbia, free and independent. Serbia of all of us who are her children, no matter how far we live, as long as it's in our hearts. I wish you all a happy statehood day, and of course, good luck to Novak tonight. Thank you.
Hvala Ivana Izadorović za taj lepi priča i kako je sve otišlo. Next up to speak is the Minister for Immigration and Multicultural Affairs, His name is Alex Hawke, and we are honoured to have him here tonight. He is a part of the federal government of Liberal Party here, and he's an important person. So please show your respect to him and give him a round of applause as he comes up to do his speech.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's really great to be here. My name's Alex Hawke. I'm the new Immigration Minister from the federal government. I do want to also acknowledge the traditional owners and all the special guests that have been mentioned, my parliamentary colleagues, His Grace, the Bishop, and of course we're very grateful to the Serbian Orthodox Church in Australia and the great strength they've provided to this community. I do want to acknowledge, of course, Ivana Isidorovic there. That she tells me that was her first speech. I have to say that was a very good first speech. And a very difficult act to follow. But I will say this, I think I can be just as popular as you in saying that we do love Serbian Australians here in Australia. The migration, yes indeed, absolutely. And being half Greek myself, born to a Greek mother who fled after World War II, I do recognise all the similarities of the culture that you've brought here to Australia. And I take very seriously your quest for independence from the Ottomans, the success of building a new nation state around the rule of law, around separation of powers, all of these things that are recognisable not just in Serbia but here in Australia, which have made the migration of Serbians to this country so successful and so great, because the values are shared. We have shared values that have meant that people here work very hard, look after their families, obey the law, and are free to worship and practice their speech the way they want to. And I agree with you, Ivana, that the whole Serbian journey is not just Novak Djokovic, although he is a successful part of it, and certainly he is a good ambassador here in Australia. But really, when you think about it, this year has been one of the most difficult that we have had in 100 years, not just in Europe or in America, but also here in Australia. And tonight, we all spare a thought for those Victorians who are in lockdown again, fighting off a virus, a whole state that is locked up. And we do want to again acknowledge the state government, Premier Berejiklian and the New South Wales government for the way they've handled this pandemic and kept us safe and continue to keep us safe as we go. From the Prime Minister, I just wanted to say one thing to you on this very special day, and that is, of course, thank you for the strength of your community and looking after each other during this very difficult year. Australia has done very well, there is no doubt about it, in the last 12 months. We've done well because we have been well governed at the federal and state level. But we've also done very well because all of the communities like yours have looked after yourselves, looked after each other, and looked after other people who've needed it all through the course of this year. And as Australians, we've come together, and one thing we can see, when we see societies fractured all around the world, we see strong societies we've always thought of as the most strong in the world. America, so strong cultures in Europe, polarised along class lines, along economic lines, fracturing because of the pandemic. But in Australia, we've all come together, we have great social cohesion, and we've done really well. We've got a long way to go, but we're going to do very well because of the great efforts of everybody here, because of strong communities, strong values and strong families. And I do want to just have a special shout out to SOYA tonight, a country, a state, a group of people, a culture is only as strong as its youth, and it is amazing that every year you pull on an event of this nature, of this scale, that celebrates your culture and brings people together as well. Thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Alex Hawke, for that. Next up, we'll have Councillor Robert Cock from Sydney City Council, representing Lord Mayor of Sydney. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Good evening, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of our land, and pay my respects to the elders, both past and present. I also acknowledge the people of nearly 200 nationalities who live in our wonderfully diverse and multicultural city. And tonight especially, I would like to acknowledge the Serbian community. It's such an honor for me to be here to represent the city in this such an important day, the Serbian Statehood Banquet, organized by, of course, the 9th Serbian Festival. Firstly, please let me acknowledge Mrs. Ivana Isidorovic, the Chief of Mission, His Grace Bishop Siluan, Honorable Alex Hawke, Minister, Mr. Peter Sitgraves, representing the Premier, Mr. Paul Lynch, Mr. Alex Glomack. Ladies and gentlemen, I remember coming to the 8th Serbian Festival just last year, and it was fantastic. I was like the energy, to feel the energy in Tampalong Park, and the young people, and the happiness, the camaraderie there, and everyone was so supportive. I was just so happy, and I just think that our city is so blessed with such diversity and such multiculturalism. And tonight, actually, I was looking forward to the Kolo, and I was told that we'll only be getting someone singing traditional music, and that, of course, in itself is also very valuable in terms of our the cultural heritage. Sydney is one of the world's most diverse cities, and that is part of its appeal. It is something to be cherished, to be proud of, and to be fostered by our ethnic communities and by the city itself. Each of our national communities are made up of its own distinct contribution to 21st century multicultural Australia, and the Serbs are no exception, contributing across the whole spectrum of our society. We just heard earlier that we have a health worker here, as a Serbian health worker, to help us through this pandemic that we've been through last year, and hopefully this year will be much, much better. You have academics, doctors, lawyers, politicians of Serbian heritage, as well as trades people, teachers, and people in a whole range of jobs. It is important to acknowledge the contribution of all of them, and for them to be proud of their heritage and this contribution they are making to the people they are and to our city. So in this day, also I note that the youth committee led by Mikhail and Sandra here done such a fantastic job, and they are very young, and it's because of this younger generation that is able to bring forth a lot more vigor, enthusiasm to the events that you're having. And at this moment of time, we're also having our Lunar New Year Festival, and run by the city of Sydney. It is one of the largest outside of Asia of its kind. Our Lunar Festival is not only celebrated by those communities that celebrate the Lunar New Year, but also by other communities. The Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese, they celebrate the Lunar New Year. But in our festival, we also have the Japanese, the Indonesians, and come and perform. So I hope next year we can get the Serbian community to come and perform in Town Hall and showcase the cultural performances. So for this year, so I wish everyone a happy statehood, a very happy statehood day, and enjoy tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Koch. We were thrilled to have you at the festival last year, and we know it's a little bit different tonight, being a formal dinner rather than having 100,000 people in Tampalong Park, but we're hopeful that we'll be back in 2021, bigger and better, for our 10th annual event, where we will have a whole host of performances. So thank you again. Next up to speak is a dear friend of the Serbian community, our local state member from Liverpool, Mr. Paul Lynch. He has been at, I believe, every single Serbian festival since the inception of the event, so 9 years ago, and here he is in our COVID-safe dinner here again. So we appreciate his attendance, and we call him up to do his speech. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Michael. I commence by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Can I also acknowledge His Grace, the Very Reverend Bishop Silowan? Can I also acknowledge John Jeremic, the SOYA Treasurer, and all of the other workers from SOYA who not only put this together tonight, but have put festivals together for the last 9 years? Can I also acknowledge, of course, Alec Hawke, Robert Koch, Peter Sidgraves, and Alec Glumac. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation to be here. As Michael said, I've been to the last 9 of the festivals. They're great days, and everyone I know is upset that we haven't been able to do it this year for those obvious reasons. But they're great days for a number of reasons. One is they're a spectacular celebration of Serbian culture, and that's important. It's important for communities such as yours to maintain your identity, because if you don't know who you are, what chance have you got? I mean, it's a really central thing. Who are you? Where are you from? Celebrating your culture lets you do that. It's also, can I say, a profoundly Australian thing to do. The essence of contemporary Australia is that we are made up of people that have come from all around the world and have decided to make this their place. That doesn't mean they forget who they are or throw their culture away. What that means is we have a range of communities celebrating their cultures, celebrating who they are and where they're from. That's what contemporary multiculturalism is. That's contemporary Australia. Some people try and define Australian to be too narrow. You've all got to sound and talk like a bloke called Lynch. That's a nonsense. That defies our history. It undervalues just how good a place this is. I mean, Australia is a great place to live. One of the reasons for that is that multiculturalism. One of the reasons we are such a good country in which to live is communities such as yours and the contribution that you make. Partly through maintaining your culture, but also, frankly, the work you do. You can't be the member for Liverpool without knowing a bit about how hard Serbs work. I first started as a lawyer many years ago working for a bloke called Stojkovic, so I speak from experience, can I say. Certainly the Serbian presence in southwest Sydney and Liverpool has been absolutely central, and it's been overwhelmingly positive. One thing about Australians is that we don't like to talk ourselves up. We don't actually go around telling everyone how good we are. It's an old, you're cutting down the tall poppy syndrome. I think it's probably got to do with convict ancestry. Don't want to let anyone get too tall. So we don't say often enough how good we are, how good communities such as yours are, how successful our contemporary multiculturalism is. It's something that we should celebrate a whole lot more and talk about a whole lot more positively, a whole lot more frequently. Thanks for the invitation to be here. Have a great night.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate your kind words about our community, and we hope to see you back next year once again. Our next speaker is Mr. Peter Sidgraves, MP, member for Camden. He's here representing the Premier Gladys Berejiklian. As you all know, she was part of the Serbian community a few weeks ago, opening the college, Sensava College, down in Varaville. So we're honoured to have Mr. Sidgraves here on her behalf. So Peter, please.
Thanks, Michael. And look, I must say that the brand new St Sava College, right next door to my electorate, and I was invited, and I apologise I wasn't able to attend, but it's an absolute pleasure to be here tonight, and particularly representing the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian. I'm so proud to be here and acknowledge and thank you, our Serbian community, for sharing your culture and values. It is important because of you and the many cultures that call Australia home, that have formed our country, and are the reason we are so strong and so diverse. Australia and Serbia share a long history of working together, as Sandra mentioned this morning. Many Australians fought as allies with Serbia in both World Wars. Each Anzac Day, Australians and Australians of Serbian descent march in the Anzac Parade together, honouring those who fought for the values and lifestyles we cherish today. There are approximately 100,000 Serbian Australians with 44 Serbian Orthodox Church parishes across Australia and New Zealand, including 4 monasteries. There is a church in every Australian state and territory. The Australian Serbian community has contributed greatly and raised huge amounts of money for charity, and most recently our rural fire service, who were greatly impacted during the 2019-2020 bushfire season. I acknowledge the Australian Serbian Commerce Chamber, who are working to further develop and strengthen bilateral trade and investment and other socio-economic ties between the two countries. Premier Gladys Berejiklian opened just last month St Sava College, the first Serbian Orthodox school in Australia. At the opening, Premier Berejiklian, who helped lay the foundation stone for the school sometime in 2004, spoke of the affinity that she feels with the Serbian community because of her own Orthodox background and being a kuma to 4 Serbian children. The Premier shared at the opening her deep gratitude to the proud Australian Serbian community and for your service and contribution in honouring and sharing your heritage and family values that make our country and our state so great. Political and cultural freedom are always to be celebrated, and tonight we commemorate the liberation of Serbia from Ottoman occupation. On behalf of the New South Wales Premier and the state government, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sidgreaves, for that. We appreciate that the Premier couldn't be here tonight and you're here as her representative. So we're going to take a short break from the speeches and we're going to have the female vocal ensemble from Ravna Gora, from the Serbian Centre Bonnery Club, performing some traditional Serbian ethno songs, which Councillor Koch alluded to in his speech. So if we could please warmly welcome the vocal ensemble. what a performance. Can we get one more round of applause for Ravna Gora? Thank you, girls. We were absolutely disheartened with the restrictions. We could not have the folklore tonight, so we got the next best thing, some beautiful nošnje and some beautiful songs. Just to let everyone know, we will be having a silent auction tonight, and those, after the speeches conclude, those items will just be displayed with the historical artefacts, and we'll have a list there where you can put your name, phone number and your bid, which will be announced later tonight around 9 p.m. So we'll continue with the speeches now, and we have Mr. Alex Glumac, who's representing the member for Fowler, Mr. Chris Hayes. Alex Glumac is a well-known and friend of the Serbian community. He also emceed the fundraising evening for the bushfire appeal. So we should applaud and welcome Mr. Alex Glumac. Thank you.
I'm actually not famous because I'm yet to have a Wikipedia page, but I do acknowledge Michael's wonderful gesture, words. I think it's a bit exaggerated. Your Grace, Reverend Fathers, Your Excellencies, Members of Parliament, Councillors and dear friends of the Serbian community, it's an honour to be representing the Federal Member for Fowler, Mr. Chris Hayes, who is unable to grace us with his presence this evening, but he extends his thank you to SOYA for the invitation, and also would like to congratulate them for organising tonight's banquet. Chris has long been a friend of the Serbian community, even prior to becoming a Member of Parliament. As a matter of fact, the very electorate he represents has among the highest Serbian populations in Australia. He's witnessed many wonderful deeds over the years. If you recall, back in 2014, Serbia experienced its worst flooding in more than a century. The Serbian community jumped into action, raised much needed funds for their fellow countrymen and women back in Serbia. Fast forward to 2019, we have witnessed in Australia the worst bushfire season in more than 25 years. Those fires alone have decimated a large portion of New South Wales. Seeing those sad images appear before our very eyes, it breaks the heart. Yet again, the Serbian community, without hesitation, under the auspices of His Grace, started to raise funds, not just money, but to buy vital necessities for our fireys, for the very residents who have lost so much over the years. The very things they built with their bare hands just incinerated. And the Serbian community dug deep, they dug well, and even after the fundraiser, they continued to work hard to go down south to help. When it comes to the Serbian community, Chris appreciates their benevolence, generosity, and also their very will to overcome any obstacle to move forward. In 2013, Chris was a member of a parliamentary delegation that went to Serbia with the aim to improve bilateral ties between Serbia and Australia. A new trade agreement was signed. The trade between Australia and Serbia now is worth more than $70 million. Now, you're probably thinking, why am I talking about this? When Chris was in Serbia, he met with the then Prime Minister of Serbia, Ivica Dačić, and he also met with various other parliamentarians of the Serbian government. And that's the key word. Serbian governments did not exist some 200 years ago. As Minister Hawke has said earlier, Serbia as a nation was under the Ottoman Empire for almost 5 long centuries. Serbia was deprived of its sovereignty, of its own nation to rule, to govern. Serbia not only lost her territory, but also children, wives, husbands. A lot of people lost their lives. The tax in blood, as I say in Serbian, dranak u krvi. A lot of children were taken away, and enough was enough. In 1804, George Petrovic, who became to be known as Karađorđe Petrovic, the progenitor and the founder of the Karađorđević house, he and many of his fellow chieftains got together in Orašac to start the first Serbian uprising. And that was the first step in the very 30-year revolution, in which we also saw the second Serbian uprising led by Miloš Obrenović from the opposing house. The 15th of February, Sretenje Gospodnje, or Candlemas as they say in English, holds a very important place in the Serbian custom and Serbian history. Now, we can talk about Serbian history the entire night, because the Serbian history is quite vast and voluminous. Going back to the historical phase, Karađorđe led the first uprising, and that lasted for about 9 or 10 years. Serbia endured a lot of losses and also had many victories. In 1815, Serbia became a principality. In 1835, she adopted a first constitution. Now, subsequently, in 1882, she became a kingdom under the Obrenović house. So, as you can see, it took more than 60 years for Serbia to evolve. It was quite painstaking, quite arduous, but they got the job done. Sadly, alas, a lot of lives were lost. We need to revere the past heroes who have lost their lives to give Serbia a new history, a new page. Like I said, the Serbian government was non-existent. And throughout time, she has evolved into a well-respected country in Europe. Now, that's what we need to be thankful about. If it wasn't for their sacrifice, we would not have Serbia as a country. Now, as this is a Serbian event, I would just like to say some words in Serbian, if I may. Vaše preosveštenstvo, časni oci, vaše ekscelencije, odbornici, poslanici i dragi prijatelji srpske zajednice. Meni je velika čast da zastupam gospodina Chris Hayesa, federalnog poslanika za okrug Fowler, koji nažalost ne može da bude večeras, ali se zahvaljuje na pozivnici i čestita SOYI i Mihajlu što su organizovali večerašnji prijem ili banket. Chris je dugogodišnji prijatelj srpske zajednice i on je očevidac niz njenih dobrih dela. Kao što sam rekao na engleskom, 2014. godine u Srbiji bile su poplave i to su bile najgore poplave zadnjih 100 godina. Pre 2 godine unazad mi smo bili očevidci najkatastrofalnijih požara u Australiji, pogotovo u ovoj državi. I srpska zajednica je ponovo bila izdašna i uspela da pomogne svim tim jadnim ljudima koji su izgubili sve. Chris kao poslanik bio je član jedne parlamentarne delegacije koji su otišli u Maticu u Srbiju da se poboljšaju odnosi između Srbije i Australije. Taj sporazum je bio jako uspešan i tada je Chris je više saznao o srpskoj istoriji i on ceni srpsku zajednicu i šta su oni jadni iskusili tokom 5 vekova, taj zulum što su oni jadni iskusili. I on kao ovde u Australiji vide sa svojim očima kako je srpska zajednica doprinela. Oni su bili jako još uvek uticani na razvoju moderne Australije. I mi moramo da se zahvalimo svim tim junacima, herojima koji su se borili za novu Srbiju. Hoću još jednom da se zahvalim svima vama na vašoj dobrodošlici i da se zahvalim Mihajlu Mijatoviću i čitvoj njegovoj ekipi što su organizovali ovaj banket. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for that. I just have a correction to make. There is a whole team here, not just me. So thank you to Sandra, Petar, Sara and Jovo, who have also been indispensable in the organisation of this evening, as well as thank you to His Bishop, His Grace, Silowan and the Metropolitanate, as well as the Embassy of Serbia. We'll now hear from His Grace, His Holiness, the Very Reverend Bishop Silowan. So thank you, Your Grace.
Pomaže Bog i srećno navečer je velikog praznika Sretenje Gospodnjeg i srećan dan Drzavnosti. Very Reverend and Reverend Fathers, Your Excellencies, representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, Honourable Minister and Members of Parliament, Councillors, beloved Sojans, our youth, draga omladino, dear brothers and sisters, draga braćo I sestre. It is my distinct privilege, honor and joy to greet you all this evening on the eve of Sretenje, one of the greatest feasts of our Holy Church, when we celebrate the presentation of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ to the temple in Jerusalem, and the day in which we celebrate Serbian Statehood. In the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 5, we read that light dispenses darkness. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. It disperses darkness. The occupation of Serbia by the Ottoman Empire was a great darkness that covered the medieval Serbian kingdom and its people. The feast day of Sretenje, 1804, was the day in which a spark kept alight within the Serbian people's inner sanctum for many centuries, ignited and became a mighty flame that would engulf their entire being and nation, paving the way to their ultimate liberation. This spark was their unwavering faith and trust in God. Sretenje, through its biblical discourse, is a feast day which teaches us to trust in God, to be patient and tireless in reaching out to Him. Saint Simeon, who met Christ face to face on this feast day at the Temple of Jerusalem, is given to us as a paradigm of this faith and this trust we are to have. After receiving revelation that he would meet the promised Messiah, Saint Simeon patiently waited for the fulfillment of this promise, even though many centuries had passed. When the God-child Christ was brought by his mother to the temple in order to fulfill the prescribed Jewish law, which pertained to those who were newly born, Simeon, and through him all of humanity, came face to face with the fulfillment of this promise of God given to us concerning the coming of the Messiah, the Saviour, the one who would set us free from our spiritual captivity and bring us out of darkness into light. This meeting, or Sretenje, was a tremendous turning point in the history of humankind, of humanity, but likewise in the history of our Serbian nation. It was a day in which the Serbian people came face to face with their long-awaited hope, their salvation. Sretenje would become the catalyst for the liberation of Serbia and the adoption of the Constitution of the Principality of Serbia, one of the most democratic and liberal constitutions of its time in Europe. What else can we learn from Sretenje? We learn that when faced with difficulties, we should not become faint-hearted and lose hope, but rather patiently wait in prayer and trust in God for our deliverance, be it at an individual or personal level or communal, national level. Last year brought tremendous changes and challenges to humanity. many liberties that were taken for granted became restricted or prohibited. A hug, a traditional Serbian kiss 3 times on the cheek, a handshake, even a face expression was lost now under the veil of the mask. Serbian Statehood Day teaches us that no liberty can be obtained without struggle, primarily the inner struggle, but also that no values, especially the perpetual values that form society, can be properly understood until they are experienced through this struggle. As C.S. Lewis says, hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. Our Christian faith teaches us that without Golgotha, without the Calvary, there can be no resurrection, no renewal. Recently, we as a community in ANZ, in Australia and New Zealand, experienced our very own Sretenje, the realization and building of our very first Serbian school, carrying the name of our greatest edifier and illuminer, Saint Sava. This project, after almost 2 decades from its inception, finally, from a dream became a reality. Bilo je veoma teško, braćo I sestre. Veliki su izazovi bili za prvu srpsku školu, za njeno završavanje I otvaranje. Ali isti srpski narod, koji je 1804. godine uz vožda Karađorđija ustao, je prepoznao značaj ove škole. I pošli smo jurišnim korakom. I došla je pandemija. I velike poteškoće su nastale za nas. Ali smo kao narod znali da nismo sami. Znali smo da u našoj istoriji, pored nas, naše želje I našeg napora, stoji Bog. Stoje molitve nebeske Srbije. Stoji Sveti Otac naš Sava. Stoje vidovdanski mučenici. I mi smo, braćo I sestre, učinili ono što smo mi mogli kao narod. Naš čovek je znojem I krvlju, ljubavlju svojom za buduće generacije I opstanak našeg naroda uložio veliki napor uz kumove koledža koji su donirali od srca velike svote novca za ovaj projekat, a također uz kaplarni juriš naših 1300 kaplara koji se odazvali pozivu naše majke crkve I koledža, radom naše omladine SOYE, mi smo, braćo I sestre, I teškim radom našeg odbora, moram da ih pohvalim. Odbor koledža Svetog Save sa svojim pododborima je učinio ogroman podvig da se ovaj projekat završi. I hvala Bogu, braćo I sestre, na Svetog Savu smo otvorili prvu našu srpsku školu I stali smo u red ozbiljnih etničkih zajednica na ovim prostorima. Naša želja je da opstanemo kao narod na ovim prostorima, ali isto tako da ponudimo nešto ovom narodu koji nas okružuje. A smatram da imamo što da ponudimo. Jer mi smo narod čiji koreni su naopačke nasađeni sa neba, dopiru do zemlje, a zato ne mogu da saseku, zato što ne znaju odakle potiču koreni, pa kada maše, oni maše. Eto, braćo I sestre, I'll just go back to English. The members of St. Sava's College, the board members, our subcommittees, they experientially know on their own skin how the hand of God was involved in this project in order for us to deliver the opening on St. Sava's Day 2021 of this year in January 27. It is our community's desire to share its unique thread to contribute to the upbuilding of this wonderful nation. And what a better way to do this than through education, and not only a mere academic one, but a holistic education which encompasses an ethos, an Orthodox ethos, Orthodox Christian ethos, one that derives from the spirit and foundation of Sretenje, the dialectic of the human spirit working with God, the human created energies working with the uncreated energies of God. In closing, I would like to acknowledge our brilliant youth, our SOYA team who have organized this event and who for the past 9 years have brought the Serbian spirit, its exuberance, the arts of Serbian dance, costume and music, our faith and culture into the heart of Australia's most beautiful, John Jeremic, and largest harbour city, to be shared and celebrated with our fellow Australians. A big thank you to our youth, to our beloved directors, our volunteers, and everyone who has been a part of this journey, which we pray will continue, and we are certain that by God's grace it will. May God bless your work, your strenuous efforts. May God bless your ministry in this nation. I would likewise like to congratulate our various team representatives of the Serbian Embassy and the Republic of Srpska. Republika Srpska, ne možemo mi to BiH. And congratulate you on this wonderful feast, which we all celebrate, the feast of Serbian Statehood and the feast of the Serbian nation. God bless you all, and thank you, and a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Grace. We are honoured to have you here, and thank you for your kind words and your brilliant address. I'm sure many people will have learned something from your wise words. Next, I just hope everyone can enjoy their mains, and I'd just like to thank our special guests and our dignitaries for attending, and we have a small gift for each of you. I'll bring it to you, so you don't need to get up. And yes, and everyone else enjoy the rest of the evening, where music will be beginning shortly. As I said, please remember the silent auction at the front of the room, and when you head over after you finish your meals, have a look at the items, and please place down your bids. Thank you.
naše